A breath of fresh air. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Breaks my soul and cried. My mind is moving slow. Far from all I know. Give me time to know. My mind is moving slow.
Welcome to Sunday Sanctuary. E ngā manu, e ngā reo, mai ngā hau e whā. Tatu mai nei ki te manga o tēnei rā kau whakaruruhau. Tau mai nei ki tēnei kaupapa e pāpaho atu nei ki a koutou a rā ko Sunday Sanctuary. Ko Petra Bagust tēnei, e rere ana ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa. To you from every corner of our beautiful country, come, land on the branch of this sheltered tree. Welcome to this kaupapa, this project, Sunday Sanctuary, going out to you all. I'm Petra Bagust and I acknowledge and welcome each of you. Now, in the lead up to this episode of Sunday Sanctuary, which is all about brave conversations, there have been many delays and interruptions. In fact, if you see footage online of this episode, you will notice that we're not in the studio. That's because, due to the fact that I'm fighting, I think I'm in my fourth week of fighting off infections, or rather succumbing to infections and then trying to recover from them, we're recording at my home. And just in this last couple of days before we bring this all together, I've had to have 3 or more brave conversations. And I just want to kind of confess up front that brave conversations aren't easy for me. I just want to be the person that facilitates and makes things happen and that just goes, yep, no, I can do that. No, I can change. Leave it to me. I would much rather be the yes person who is useful and helpful than the person who needs to be helped or supported or has to ask for what they need or put other people out. And so brave conversations come in many different shapes and sizes. They come in different temperatures even. Some are really intense and some are less intense. But in this, I guess, lead up, I've had a brave phone call with a friend after I ended up accidentally in the middle of some family hurt and pain. And I had to, take a deep breath and call my friend and find out what was going on and how to move forward in a way that encouraged peace. I had to have a brave conversation with my son about bedtimes where I was feeling like he was really testing me. And in the end, I decided to be the adult and to choose trust. So rather than leaving it, rather than just getting in a huff and going, well, fine, be like that, my husband encouraged me to not be bullied and to not be childish either. Like these are confronting ideas. How do I step into respectful, kind, confident adulting in myself and in essence then treat the other person with that respect and kindness that I'm choosing to behave in? So yeah, another brave conversation literally was asking my colleague first to delay this recording and then to bring all of the stuff over here and record at home, to put him out, to delay it, to put my needs to recover well before the need for what was convenient and easy. That was hard, but actually it is amazing how when we show up and stand up and ask for our needs to be met or have a brave conversation, so often I think the result is positive. And so we hope that by the end of this episode, you'll come away feeling brave, equipped even, to have brave conversations that perhaps have felt previously too much, or even to hold the tension during a brave conversation that you know is coming, to listen deeply without having to defend your position, but rather to hold the tension of that and allow somebody else to be heard. So, welcome to Brave Conversations. This is Sunday Sanctuary. It's time now for a moment of awe.
Awe, wonder, surprise, incredulity, admiration, marvel at the world we live in. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Watching a kitten fumbling around. It might feel as if you've never encountered anything so devastatingly adorable in your mortal life. You may want to pet its soft fur and kiss its tiny head. But you may also feel the conflicting urge to squeeze or smush the kitten, maybe even stuff it in your mouth. However, you don't, and you might be appalled by yourself. But this urge, which psychologists call cute aggression, is a surprisingly common one, estimated to affect about half of all adults. But why does cuteness have this hold on us? It's nearly impossible to know for sure, but one theory is that cute things simply make us want to nurture them. Because human babies are relatively helpless on their own, it's hypothesized that evolution favored infants who were perceived as cute and inspired more care and interaction. But if cuteness is related to nurturing and decreased aggression, why would anyone ever want to squeeze or bite cute things? Well, cute aggression is importantly not linked to the actual intention to do harm. Instead, it seems to result from emotional overload. Some scientists think that cute things elicit such positive emotions from certain people that the experience becomes overwhelming. They hypothesize that slightly aggressive, discordant thoughts are the brain's way of putting the brakes on and regulating those intense feelings, not getting you to actually eat a kitten.
Okay, well, that's good. I get to make sense to myself even more when I want to squeeze a cute little puppy dog or infant human being. Okay, don't worry, no children or animals have been harmed in the making of this podcast. I'd love now to invite you to an examine, which we think of as taking a look at something, examining, if you will, something. And my invitation today is to really connect in with yourself. It's to, maybe you could call it to have a brave conversation with your own body. So if you're able to be grounded and settled, I'm going to invite you to connect with yourself. So take a moment to get comfortable. Perhaps you're sitting or standing. I'm suggesting that you essentially arrive in your body. So make adjustments to be more at ease and to allow you to be present. So you're aiming for settled and present to have a supportive way of being in this moment. You can adjust your posture so that you are engaged. Your body is very present, but also at ease. And a loving reminder that you don't have to be as still as possible or to do this reflection perfectly. So there's absolutely no issue. If you get distracted, just think of there being a gentle invitation to come back to my words or to your body. So whatever it is you can do to feel connected to your body, just do that. Adjust your body as often as you like. Right. Now that you're at ease and present, now that you have arrived somewhat in your own beautiful body, I invite you to notice your feet, to sense their exterior edges with your mind. So to trace your feet, if you will, with your mind. And when you are ready, try taking your attention and traveling inside your body. Sense your feet from the inside. Perhaps the temperature. Do you have any experience of tightness or pressure or pleasure? And allow your mind to still a little more. Allow your attention to settle in the interior space of your feet. Can you become aware of a pulsing or buzzing or vibrating sensation inside your feet? If so, try to allow yourself to just observe that sensation for a moment. I will say that your attention and curiosity is more important than the sensation itself. So if you can find the sensation, feel it, you might think of it as life itself, life pulsing through you, not out there somewhere, but right here in this moment in your feet. You can stay with your feet, or you could draw your attention internally up into your ankles. Perhaps the buzzing or pulsing is there. Feel life flowing through your feet and ankles. You might draw it further up into your calves. Take some moments to experience life moving through you, living in your body in this moment. And if you widen your attention now, you might even imagine life flowing through all your body, sensing that you are here, fully alive. If it's too much at any time, return to your feet. Find those outer edges or that interior pulsing. Linger here as long as you like, sensing the flow of life. And finally, take 3 rounds of intentional breath before you move on. Okay, I don't know if you've ever done a meditation like that, but that was directly inspired by Hilary McBride, who is a trauma specialist and expert and who has wonderful meditations online. And I experienced the power of coming into a specific place in my body just recently when a friend was in intense pain, and she managed to actually calm her pain, have a very brave conversation with her body by allowing herself to be present. And allowing every feeling to be present in her body, and then being able to, I guess, get a handle on it and say to her body, it's okay, you're okay. Now, coming up, I'm excited because I had a conversation earlier in the week with counsellor, parent coach and author of Mindful Parenting, Shirley Pastiroff. She's a friend and also a therapist whose work I really rate. And we had a discussion about the different ways people approach difficult conversations, because it's worth understanding how you might react and respond, and the person you're talking to might react and respond in a difficult conversation. And she has some wonderful tools to help us through these conversations. Can't wait. But right now, I'm going to invite producer Sam to come and tell us about our sacred text this week.
It's the Sacred Text on Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Always good getting the producers on. Can you tell me how you came across this song?
This is a song from a band called This Is The Kit. I've liked their sound for a while and sort of rediscovered an album of theirs that I hadn't listened to in quite a while. Around the same time that we were putting together this episode, and I just sort of realised, hey, there's some crossover here. This song and this topic, it just all lined up.
Tell me what it was about this song that made you feel like it did fit nicely with our kōrero of brave conversations.
Listening to the lyrics, to me, it sounded like this, just like a story from start to finish about the feeling that this, mother has wanting to talk to her daughter about a relationship that she's in, and just the words used in the chorus are just sort of describe the exact feeling of when you need to have a brave conversation, but you just haven't done it quite yet. And you can just feel it sort of eating at you inside.
It is quite visceral, eh? It can
really
be,
is.
Can be a physical sensation. Can you relate personally? Do you have an experience of a brave conversation?
Yeah. I guess the brave conversation that comes immediately to mind is the conversation that I had to have with my ex-girlfriend when our relationship came to an end just after Christmas. And, there was a this is why I'm relating to this song, especially the chorus, is that there was a long period of time where I felt like, I need to have this brave conversation. And for the longest time, it just didn't happen. And then I was at home at Christmas and ended up having, I guess, what you could call another brave conversation with my mum, just, being able to sort of verbalize your feelings and processing it that way. And just the sense of relief was, after that conversation with my mum, was pretty visceral.
Palpable. You could feel it.
Yeah, hugely. Yeah, at the end of that conversation, she said something like, well, now that we've talked about all of this, are you feeling relieved or are you feeling still unsure? And straight away I'm just like, no, relieved. Yeah.
So coming home to a hard truth for yourself, because in essence, even the end of a relationship like that, which is beauty and complexity in it, that you're ending it because it's not working anymore. It's not life-giving for both parties anymore. So it's a kind of a beautiful example. Well, we don't get to listen to the whole song. Shirley and I got to listen to the whole song, but we haven't paid the rights for the whole song. So
we did ask them if we could play part of the song, and they very kindly, Kate, the lead singer, very kindly allowed us to.
So some of the lyrics Shirley refers to in our conversation are at the end of that song. So if you want to hear the lyrics she's referring to in awesome audio, feel free to look up Found Out by This Is The Kit on Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your music, and listen to the whole tune.
Ask yourself, what do you expect when you keep it so secret? You carry it around, alone in your bloodstream, it eats in your bones. You're keeping it secret, you carry it around, it burns you in blisters. What do you expect when you keep it so secret? You carry it around, alone in your bloodstream, it eats at your bones. You're keeping it secret, you carry it around. So speak the words, let yourself breathe, deep relief, ask yourself.
It's a pleasure and a joy to have you in the studio, Shirley Pastiroff.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and a joy to be here.
Yay, so good. And I know you as an author, as a parenting coach, as a counsellor, and as a friend. So I don't know you fully, but I know you a little bit.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, and I find your ability to share what you know to be really generous and kind, that you deliver your wisdom with a lot of respect and enough edge to make a difference. So thanks. Yeah. What we're going to be talking about today is brave conversations. And so as a therapist, I've come and seen you, and we've had what I would call brave conversations, where I've brought difficulties or vulnerabilities and sought your guidance. And as a therapist, I'd really love it today if after our conversation, people perhaps have for themselves a sense of encouragement to have a brave conversation, or to hold themselves in a brave conversation slightly differently to how they might have before they'd listened to us.
Sounds good.
So I guess maybe kicking off a conversation based on some of those lyrics: speak the words, let yourself breathe, deep relief, ask yourself. There are times in our lives when I think we feel like something needs to be said, that we need to show up and say how something's impacting us, or, the effect of another person's behaviour on us. And yet that's often called confrontation. And a phrase that we hear a lot in our society is, I hate confrontation. I'm useless at confrontation. I'm no good at confrontation. And so even in naming this podcast Brave Conversations, we're trying to shift the perspective a little bit. What would you say about the idea of brave conversations?
Yeah, I think it's interesting listening to that song and how much background, silent, private work, how much imagination, how much living is going on in that space inside. That means that when the words do come out, sometimes they don't come out all that well, which is why this song makes me think about how important the inner relationship with oneself is first before the brave conversation, because both personally I know this, and working with couples in therapy, working with individuals in therapy, it can often go both ways, where somebody speaks the words before they're ready to speak them, where they can be created joining. So that last phrase, when will these people join, is that often if the words come out before there's been some self-regulation, it causes a bigger rift. And then people back off having the brave conversation because last time it didn't work very well. So there's, I think, important conversation to actually have first about what is a brave conversation and actually what's a really unwise moment to start to have that conversation, because the backlash may mean you either never do it again or the outcome is even worse.
What do we need to do for ourselves or within ourselves to be able to have a redemptive or helpful brave conversation?
So I think one of the first things is there's a couple of kind of dynamics that are often used in psychological conversations around personality types. They're a little bit binary, but I think they're really useful. So the first is called the withdrawer, sometimes called the hedgehog, and the second is the pursuer, sometimes called the rhino. And what that means is none of us are completely one or the other, but often in a setup, whether it's with a colleague or particularly in romantic relationships, one person has less capacity for all this private holding back and tends to be more stressed by unresolved stuff. So they'll move into the space quite quickly, and that's called the pursuer
or the rhino,
where you put your horn down and you go for it.
It's just the perfect picture, isn't it?
It's a great picture, but actually it's a picture of a frustration of a really positive gifting, which is I don't like our relationship to be in this tense, unresolved state, so I need to get involved. And I may not be in the best state to get involved, but I'm too stressed inside, so I speak. Now, for the withdrawer or the hedgehog, that can be really scary, because what they need to do, which I think the song is describing this personality type, is they need to kind of hold it in and figure it out, work out if they're deserving of saying what they want to say and whether they got it wrong and whether all of those things. And they tend to curl up in a ball and kind of stick their slightly defensive spikes out. So they withdraw from conflict. Now, both personality types would say they're conflict avoidant. I've yet to meet somebody who's told me they like conflict. So we know that both of them are trying to create harmony, one by not making it worse, by not getting stuck in, one by getting stuck in and creating resolution. And even that awareness can be hugely healing for two people that are trying to figure out how we can improve our relationship. Both are trying to do that, one by moving in and one by moving out. So I think that's the first thing to go, I wonder which one of us is doing which of those patterns.
So what do we do? Say if we have a brave conversation to talk about rhinos and hedgehogs, what's the next step, so to speak?
Yeah. So the next step is to learn the bit that you're least good at.
To do the thing you really don't want to do.
Yeah, because actually...
Engage your...
Yeah, so when you find somebody that's more on the, say, withdrawer side, say in this song, they've got this big story that's built up inside, maybe they're not deserving of asking the difficult question or speaking their needs out, is for them to find a place where they can get themselves into what I call a green brain state. And that can be all sorts of different strategies, but often it means some form of breathing, some form of self-reassurance, some form of place where you say, I'm here to meet my own needs predominantly, but I'm also allowed to share some of those needs with another person to see whether they can come towards me. So there's a big piece in here of taking self-responsibility that says I'm responsible for dialing down the cortisol in my system and coming forward with some of what I call the green brain hormones, which are oxytocin and serotonin, the connecting hormones, and then a whole bagload of courage. So that's the withdrawer where they might step into a conversation, which is be like in this song, either a little bit sooner or just with a little bit more self-regulation about not feeling like the other person holds the solution to all the meeting of all of their needs, but might be open to being involved and contributing to their needs in this conversation.
Which is a profound way of looking at a brave conversation, even to say, I need to be responsible to help meet my needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where that whole flying off the handle thing isn't a brave conversation. That's a really unwise moment where you didn't. And again, we all do it. So I'm not for a moment suggesting that we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying you won't get the outcome you want. So for efficacy and for a great outcome, that would be, so for the withdrawer,
rhino?
And for the rhino is the opposite energy. The rhino is that moment of going, can I hold the tension of this unresolved situation for longer? Long enough that I can bring myself down, whereas with the withdrawer, they're bringing themselves up and out. So the rhino would be going, it's simple things like go and make a cup of tea, go and do something active, go and put the kettle on, go for a walk around the block, go and put a really loud song on and boogie to it for a minute or two.
Yep.
The kettle one's a great one, though, because sometimes in the kettle moment, there's an automatic, hey, would you like a cup of tea? Not always, but sometimes there's a moment of connection that doesn't include the content of what needs to be said. So the rhino needs to hold back on that. Can I regulate myself in a conflict situation and be okay with lack of resolution? And as you can tell, most of these will go back to our childhood. That feeling of the withdrawer has often been in a home where it didn't matter what they did or said, it didn't make an impact, so they've gone quiet. The rhino has often been in a situation where they're expected to step in and bring some togetherness, and so they can't leave it. So their stretch is to wait a little bit, to be a bit more restrained and see if they can bring some green brain hormones into the system. And then hopefully you're meeting with a little bit more similarity, but you don't ever swap places. You just stretch.
And maybe if you can both know what you're doing, which would be significant, you can have this sense of learning it together, of practicing, of not, well, this is my last chance or this is the only chance, or if I don't speak up now, it's, forever. Like, it's possible to catastrophize in relationships. I can't go on like this, or, rather than, I wonder if we could develop a new practice of brave or tricky or sticky conversations. And I hear what you're saying in so much as I know I would be the rhino in our conversation, in my intimate relationship. I'm like, blah, blah, we have to talk about this, we have to resolve it. And actually recently, my husband came to me and with an issue, and he told me about it, and I took a deep breath and I'm like, okay. And then he decided to tell me again, but with slightly different words and another example, and I'm like, okay. And he told me a third time, and I'm like, inside, how much of this do I have to take? Like, you start to think, does he think I'm stupid? And I was like, I was also, another, thought in my head was, can you hold? Can you keep holding? Will you keep holding? Will you just listen? And it was a real challenge. And I think I managed to do it without letting too many or any faces escape from my face. Like, I didn't pull any faces, I think, because I'm quite a big face puller, and that's not so helpful. And snarky comments, I'm quite good at a snarky comment. But it was a real conscious challenge.
Yeah, I'm laughing because the last big fight I had with my husband, he went, I had to look at your face when you had that conversation. Like, I saw the face drop. I was like, oh, damn, I hadn't said the words, but I couldn't control the face. What we know from all of the research around these conversations is that actually the outcome, and again, I'll refer to that phrase, how do these people join? Mostly these situations either resolve with togetherness or apartness, but the actual situation may not change at all. Like, you might still fully disagree on how you're going to spend your money, or fully disagree on how you're going to parent the kids, but whether you came together on hearing each other and then agreed that you
To do something
to
different.
do something completely different is more significant than whether you agreed in the end. Because often, if you agree in the end, it's because one of you won.
Oh, wow.
Whereas when you disagree, but you heard each other, you both win.
Wow. Check that out. Mic drop. I'm actually going to have to totally think about that for a while, because I know that in arguments it was so often about winning for me.
Yeah.
I've let that one go. Any more tools before, say, our hedgehog and our rhino engage?
Yeah, so there's a tool which is quite it's a self-regulation tool, and it's called Acknowledge, Link, Let Go. And again, it's one of these tools where you can play around with how precise you are with it. But what it means is that you start with acknowledging yourself. So it's a really simple body scan, high feeling of, and it could be an emotion, high feeling of fear, high feeling of anger, and it could just be high feeling in the pit of my stomach. But what you're doing is you're taking the attention off the other person and all the stories that you're telling yourself about what they have and haven't done and how they have and haven't supported you. And you're just doing a really kind noticing of what state you're in. And then the link says, it makes perfect sense. So it does. We're in a difficult situation here. I'm, say, the withdrawer. I want to run away and hide, but that program on the radio told me that I need to stretch and move forward. So high feeling of fear about the conversation, but also high feeling of fear that it might be partly my job to actually move forward. And then L at the end is let go. So all that means is there's a self-responsibility, turning to oneself. And what we know from the research is any few seconds that you take to pay awareness to yourself will bring down your cortisol levels.
Which is your stress hormone.
Which is your stress
feeling
hormone.
of
Literally, or there's a car in the
anxiety.
road, there's a tiger in the jungle, and your body starts to go, I am about to have a difficult conversation, but there isn't a tiger in the jungle. So I'm not actually about to be eaten. I can open up a little bit more to this is brave, but this is not life-threatening. So that quick stop moment, and the same for the rhino, slightly different way, would be high feeling of anger or high feeling of fear that this is unresolved. It makes perfect sense given this situation that we're having a bit of an altercation, or there's something I need to say, but I know she or he needs me to be in a slightly different state for them to hear me. And then let it go means that both people are doing just the work of being responsible for the state in which they're in before they come together to discuss what the other person might or might not have done.
Okay, say our rhino and hedgehog are engaging. Any tools for staying in those slightly more receptive or slightly more engaged states?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the best phrases to start with, and again, it can sound a little bit fake, is to say, I want to say I'm responsible for all the feelings I'm currently having. But can I share with you what it is that you did that caused some of them to happen? I may need to be in charge of all of them if it turns out that that isn't a thing you can change or need to change. But I want to know that I can share this with you. And again, those sound like really fancy words. In the height of the thing, it won't sound like that. But there's a sense in which what we're doing with each other is saying, you're not responsible for deregulating me. And that's partly because we become a victim if they are, because what if they don't? Now I'm stuffed. So if we bring ourselves into the space of going, I mean, obviously, if it's a deal breaker, if, somebody's had an affair for the 5th time and you've said no more, then that's the end of it. But I'm assuming we're in a situation here where you are able to, keep going in the relationship and actually an improved relationship as your outcome. So you're saying I'm responsible for deregulating, de-escalating what's going on inside me, but I trust you enough that it's important to you that I'm having some feelings around what just happened. And that will sound different in the rhino and different in the hedgehog kind of voices. The hedgehog will often be a little bit sarcastic. little bit kind of coming in from the side with a bit of passive aggression. The rhino can sound very direct and really unkind. And so that feeling of taking responsibility for those feelings and seeing if you can, it's almost like you're putting the thing in between the two of you. You're not putting it on the other person's lap and saying, this is your
problem.
You're saying, this is ours. I take responsibility for the bit that I think is mine, including my de-escalation of my cortisol. But this bit, it just felt really unkind what you just said, or, that landed on a nerve in me. Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
So it's got this, I'm trying to take responsibility for as much of this as I can, while also acknowledging that because we're in this together, I think this part might belong to you.
Does it? Yeah, nice. So
Does it?
Does it? Does it, please? Does it?
Please take some of it.
Nice. I like that idea of putting the thing on the table, not in the other person's lap.
Yeah.
It's quite useful. Gosh, we've got a lot of practice.
Honestly,
a lot.
this stuff is so hard. I don't think for a moment even, I certainly don't myself go away and completely apply all this in all situations. But I think having high goals for ourselves about how we can move in the world is actually hopeful, because otherwise we just come away from these situations going, I'm just not going to bother if I'm a withdrawer, and a pursuer will come away from them going, they just don't care enough to put themselves out there to get involved in discussing it. So in the end, I'll give up.
Which is a merry-go-round situation, which is very demotivating, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, I love that idea of having high hopes and also acknowledging that none of us are going to get this perfect, but we could maybe move towards it with some hope.
Yep.
Shirley Pastiroff, I can't talk to you anymore. I'll have to start paying you more. Thanks so much for the call, Doodle.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Sunday Sanctuary, a reset for your soul.
This is Sunday Sanctuary, and we are talking today about brave conversations, acknowledging now very much that it's about the quality of our listening as well as the quality of our talking that counts in a brave conversation. And so we went to you, our community, and said, tell us about a time you have had a brave conversation or initiated a brave conversation. And so here is what you said. I booked a surprise appointment for my mother at her doctor. We all had a chat together. There were tears. Tracy said she's initiated a brave conversation with friends that are allowing themselves to spiral downwards. Steph said, having the "so what are we" chat with my crush. He's my husband now. Nice. How about asking my auntie to follow COVID rules a couple of years ago so we could all keep Grandma safe? Yeah, there was a series and season of brave conversations there. Telling my mum I was pursuing fertility treatment. She'd want to know, but it's so uncertain to share. Sharon said had to have a money conversation with my mum and dad after their phone got cut off. Oh, these are tender topics. Telling my boss I was resigning to pursue my Olympic boxing dream. Go for gold. With work, I am 61 and most of my work peers are 30 to 40 years old. I said, no, I won't work 3 out of 4 weekends as I love my grandkids' time. From Suzette. Rosie said, asking, are you thinking of taking your own life? Trying to keep people at risk safe. That's big. That's huge. Em said, a friend kept being rude to me, so I asked if I had offended her in some way, and when she said no, I explained why I had asked. She cried about how hard her life was, and I empathised. I also had new boundaries and explained to her she wasn't to treat me like that. It was nerve-wracking. Rachel said I told my mum what I would like for my dad's recent funeral, or not, as it goes. It all went great. Boundaries about the way grandparents speak and touch our children. Lydia said, I apologised for undervaluing someone's work 6 years ago. He hadn't noticed. I'm a counsellor and was the only person to address my father's drinking addiction. Savannah said, letting my workplace know I needed time off to regenerate and heal. That is brave. Yana said, a chat with my mother-in-law about how she made me feel like she didn't like me. And finally, Josh, asking out a gorgeous girl when she liked someone else. We've been married 10 years and now have 3 kids. So worth having that combo. In light of your wonderful examples of brave conversations, brave kōrero, I am now going to light a candle. And this candle, for those of you who are watching it online, you'll see that my dog has eaten most of the matchbox, but there is enough left to make this work. But I'm lighting a candle for all of the times we wanted to, but were not brave enough to initiate a difficult conversation. So in essence, it's like remembering when things were tough and perhaps we or another person wasn't up for the task. And rather than holding on to that and beating ourselves up about that or continuing to remember it or use it as an excuse as to why we probably won't have a brave conversation now, I'm going to let this candle be a reminder that what is done, what is past, that there is light and life, and I am able and capable and willing to have brave conversations as part of my life. So kind of like a remembering and then a letting go. Alrighty, what have we got for you next? Well, coming up, a fantastic conversation with the Reverend Frank Ritchie and a sacred text from somewhere that you might not expect to find wisdom, or maybe you would, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Food for the Soul on Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Reverend Frank Ritchie, it's very delightful to sit down and have a kōrero with you. I enjoy it any time I do it.
Same. So let's talk.
What this episode of Sunday Sanctuary is about brave conversations, which implies they're conversations that might not be well received, or they might contain tender content or vulnerable content or hard to hear. So it implies that they're brave because there might be discomfort involved, or because you might be confronting somebody about something that, you know, they've done that isn't aligning with another person's values. How esoteric can I be? Brave conversations are basically conversations you don't want to have.
Yes.
But are important. And I think it would be worth us having a little listen to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a source of great truth and wisdom, a font of wisdom. So in this episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Captain Holt and his mum get Jake on board to try and solve the burglary crime that's happened at his mum's house. And as they're investigating it, a suspect comes up who, it turns out, is not wink, wink, nudge, nudge a suspect at all. And that results in a brave conversation between Captain Holt and his mum about how they communicate with one another. So, should we have a listen?
Yes.
Okay.
Detective Peralta, this is my mother, the Honorable Laverne Holt.
I'm very excited to meet you, and let me just say I'm a huge fan of your early work. Talking about this guy right here.
That was humor, Mother.
I know, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love laughing and laughter.
Oh.
Yes, we all do, but enough chit-chat. Peralta, my mother's house was burgled.
So why don't you tell us what happened?
When I got home last night, I noticed that the window had been smashed. The apartment was a mess. They took all of my jewelry. I assume they entered through the window, but I don't want to color your opinions.
Too late, but note taken. We'll stop by later and check out the crime scene.
That sounds appropriate.
Okay. Looks like they broke through this window, rifled through the drawers, and then noticed this adorbs photo of Tiny Holt with a tiny bow tie holding a tiny toy.
That was his first slide rule. He carried it with him all over preschool.
And then I learned to do trigonometric functions in my head like a big boy. Let's continue with the investigation.
Copy that. The alarm company said the break-in happened around 7:30. Most people are home at that time. Is there anyone who knew you'd be out?
The people who were with me at Wine Club. Oh my, I just remembered Carol Spitzheim's house was broken into several months ago, also during Wine Club.
Interesting. The odds of that happening coincidentally are vanishingly small.
I would say infinitesimally.
Yes, and I would say teenally weenally. We all know words. So, sounds like we should go undercover to the next Wine Club meeting and scope it out. You think you can get us in?
I think I can arrange that. There's one tonight.
Great. Hello, Laverne. We're not undercover anymore, so I'm no longer your acquaintance Tank. I'm back to being your close personal friend, Jake.
Okay.
We have a lead, George Kenderson. We ran his name through the system. He got a parking ticket outside your apartment last week. We think he was casing your place.
Oh my, that is shocking. I am shocked right now.
And I am enraged. We are shocked and enraged.
Yes, and we're all showing it.
I'll get the car. Stay with my mother. I've never seen her this shocked before.
Jake, I need to tell you something in confidence.
It's happening. It's dish time, okay?
George Kenderson did not rob me. He was not casing my apartment.
How do you know?
He was with me that night. Where's Raymond?
Oh, he couldn't make it. He's attending to some urgent business.
That's a stone cold lie.
Raymond?
Cowabunga, mother.
What?
Yes.
We need to talk.
I'd say that's accurate.
Well, looks like my work is done here. I'll just be leaving. Oh, damn it. Handle's still broken off. Just pretend I'm not here. I'll close my eyes.
I'm hurt that you didn't feel comfortable telling me about George Kenderson.
I didn't know how to. We're not very good at talking about personal matters.
I'd categorize that as an understatement.
Humor.
Yes, to alleviate some of the tension.
It worked. After your father died, my personal life was very sad. I didn't talk to you about it because I wanted you to think I was strong.
And I wanted you to think the same of me. I guess eventually we stopped talking about personal matters altogether.
I think it's time we let each other off the hook. From now on, I'm going to be 15% more forthcoming on personal details and 5% more physically affectionate.
And I will adjust in kind while also implementing a 12% increase in impromptu communication.
Oh, Raymond. I love you.
I love you too.
Aww. Oh, gosh. Using humour to impart truth. What are your initial thoughts from watching that clip?
First, let me put a disclaimer on the table that as we talk about this topic, I'm someone who's reasonably good at advising other people on how to have brave conversations. I'm terrible at doing them myself. So we'll just say that. But I love that clip. And I love that clip because of the way that Holt and his mother talk together when they sit down to have the hard conversation. And if you listen, what you hear them doing is reflecting what's going on for themselves rather than laying blame at the feet of the other person. Like Holt could have come in and had a go at his mother, telling her what she had done wrong and what was bad about what she was doing. But he didn't. He talked about his response and how he felt about the conversation. Then she did exactly the same. And that, in hearing each other, rather than blaming each other, they're able to find a way forward.
Okay, so that is profound, and I am going to reiterate it because it is one of the most useful things I have learnt about difficult conversations, brave conversations. I need to make I statements. I need to say what's happening for me. I need to say how it is or my perspective, because then I'm not activating defence and justification in the other person. Because in essence, I don't know what's going on inside your mind. I know that I do all sorts of quite misunderstood behaviour based out of a really good intention. Do you know what I mean? Like my son said to me, I said to my son last night, you need to exercise more. And he called me on it. And he said, Mum, can you hear how strong you sound? And I said, yep, I hear it. You're totally right. That actually wasn't redemptive or encouraging at all. It comes from a place where I want you to achieve in the sport that you want to achieve in to the level that makes you happy. I want you to go on this camp and feel really confident and good about your ability to participate. And I'm just worried that because you've been sick and because you haven't been, exercising, that you're going to find it hard. And he said, oh, well, thanks for explaining that.
Isn't it wonderful how self-aware teenagers...
So horrible.
I've got a self-aware teenager myself, how well they can take us to that space. Because my mode with my teenage girl is usually exactly what you just did, is to say, here's what you need to do and why you need to do it. And generally there'll be some sort of upset that goes with it. And then I've got to rethink how I had the conversation.
Well, for me, the place that I'm at now is when I'm confronted with my own humanity or bad communication at times, is to go, pause, I think they might be right. And so in that moment, I was able to go, absolutely agree. That would have been taken very negatively. I know I didn't mean it that way, but I didn't have to justify it and I didn't have to push back on what he was saying. I love that you have identified that they both put their own hearts on the table and said, this is how I felt and this is what was happening for me and this was the motivation for my action, which is a vulnerable thing to do.
It is. And in what I do as a church minister, but mostly as a media chaplain, I encounter people all the time who need to have some sort of brave conversation. In the church space, it can be two people who might disagree on something, or something has been said that someone might have heard and taken offence at. And so then we've got to work through what reconciliation and what a good conversation in that space looks like. Or in my role as a media chaplain, sometimes I'll sit down with people who have a particular value system and they're asked to do something where it just does not work with their value system, and they're frightened about having that conversation because they don't want to be the party pooper, they don't want to lose their job, and so then we've got to work through what it means to have that conversation. And in both of those instances, it always starts with them just telling how they feel. So in where the value systems are butted up against, it's encouraging people to go to their employer and acknowledge that what their employer has asked of them usually is true to form. It is what the organisation is about, but we can understand why the value system might be struggling there. But I'll encourage them to go to their employer and not to say that the thing is bad or what they've been asked to do is ridiculous, but just to go, here's how I feel about what I've been asked, and here's why it's a struggle for me. And then offer the chance to walk through finding another idea that might work as well. Every single time to a T, it has worked. And every one of those people has found a different solution to the problem that they were facing, and their employer completely took on board what was being said. And then in the church space, when people are able to say, I felt like this when this was said, is a much better approach than you said this and it was wrong and it was bad and here's why it was wrong and it was bad.
So you're saying keep judgment, keep assumption out of those conversations. Front up with where you are at.
Yeah.
I feel this, I find this, for me this is hard or difficult or problematic.
Which I find fascinating as a person of faith, in the Christian faith. So in my faith journey, and if I was to talk about Christian belief, it starts with this self-examination and this recognition that actually there's some stuff in me that isn't great, and that I then own that stuff. But there's this pathway that's been created in order for me to reconcile with the source of life. But if that's the starting point for me in my faith, this recognition that there's some stuff that I need to work on, then that should inject an element of humility. So then when we come to the table with anybody, we bring that humility to the table that acknowledges that actually I might not always be right, but I've learnt the tools to have a look at myself and to own where my stuff is.
That is almost like a brave conversation with oneself.
I think so. I think
It's pretty easy to deceive ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be like, I've been misunderstood, I've been wronged, nobody gets it, I'm right. Like rightness, in fact, can be problematic in that situation. I recognise that in being honest with where I'm at in certain situations, or able to take a step back and be like, okay, I am too strong or too judgmental or too critical in this environment, that almost just gives me enough space to choose a different way of being at times. If I can create a pause or a space to go, what's another way of doing this, or what's a new habit that I could form? Because I recognise that if I'm being judgmental and critical of myself, then I'm going to be judgmental and critical of other people.
Yeah.
It's just like what I'm practicing, my internal monologue. So the motivation for me is often for a change is I want to be more merciful, more compassionate, more kind, truly, and less right and less righteous. And so therefore I need to take a look at my own thoughts and how I'm talking or behaving or acting internally.
Yeah, I like that. In my prayer life, so in my rhythms of spirituality, every day I have a prayer of confession. So it's an examination of my day, and it's an examination of what was good in the day, but it's also an examination of parts of the day where I didn't live up to the type of person that I want to be.
So what if somebody's...
Now if it ended there... then you're right. I would just walk around probably being critical of everybody else as well, because I haven't found any way through that for myself. But in my faith journey, there is mercy shown. There is grace shown to me. There is a love extended to me that is beyond myself. And so part of the challenge is not just owning those places where I stuffed up. It's learning how to receive that grace, that acceptance, that love as well, that nothing can change. Doesn't matter how bad I am, it's still there. And then out of the acceptance of that, then the question goes, how do I then extend that to others?
Which makes it quite dynamic and quite layered, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it would be easy to say that you could wallow in the woe is me and I'll never improve and it's all bad and I'm blah, 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 blah. And it would be easy to just be like, nah, I'm good and everything I do is good. And so we don't actually want to land at either of those extremes, but we want to be able to move between acknowledging the good and acknowledging the bad, acknowledging where life is working or where we are achieving something or succeeding or, I don't know, just becoming more whole, healthy, and where we need support and where we need healing and where we need a little injection of hope or grace.
Yeah, and learning to hold those two things together. So my prayer rhythm every morning, it starts with 2 psalms. And those 2 psalms look very different from each other. And those 2 psalms have been prayed by many Christians, particularly in the monastic tradition since about the 6th century, every single morning. And one of them is this ask for blessing and a recognition that we can be blessed because this has been created for us, that we are loved and we have this gift that's been given to us. But then the very next psalm is a recognition of our own brokenness. So we hold those 2 things in tension. And I was reading a Catholic nun explaining those 2 psalms recently, and she pointed to a Jewish tradition from a rabbi of holding 2 stones in your pocket. One of those stones recognizes that you are blessed, you are loved, that this is all created for you. And the other stone is the recognition that you are dust, and to dust you will return. And that when we hold those 2 things together, we're holding our whole self together. And when we own those 2 things for ourselves, we're able to own them for others as well and to see that tension in others.
As I listen, I just feel calmer. I feel more at peace. I feel the invitation to accept myself and others as I am, and not without action or not without hope, not without change, but also to accept. And it's a beautiful invitation. And it harks back for me to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where even when Captain Holt and his mum were discussing how they would improve their communication, how they would reach towards each other, move towards each other with kindness and love, they still did it as themselves.
Yeah, they did.
I will be 12% more XYZ, or I will be 5% more XYZ. Like they didn't stop being themselves, but they extended themselves.
Yeah, and they have a confidence in themselves as well because they know who they are. They know they're accepted. So Captain Holt, if you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine consistently has moments where he stuffs up. And then later in the episode, you'll see him owning that stuff up and then coming to the table and owning that stuff up, but making it better. And usually it involves some sort of percentage of better improvement.
Why do you think you're not so good at brave conversations?
Oh, I think because there's still this large part of me that desperately wants to be accepted and liked by other people, and that if I put my honest thought on the table, that might then get a little broken. So it's something that I'm still working on.
It's okay to be still working on it, hey?
Totally.
Yeah. And brave conversations, you have to kind of like take a deep breath sometimes and be like, this will be okay. Like it can feel like a lot's on the line. I had a conversation with someone recently who their situation personally was changing massively, and they'd just got a new job, a new contract, and they said, what if I say where I'm at and they say, we don't want you? And so they were just like psyching up for rejection and the worst possible outcome. And it was quite a beautiful thing to come alongside them and say, could you language it like this? Could you language it that represents how you actually feel about this new season of life that you're in, that actually it's a good and positive and wonderful thing? And you hope that that's the way they see it too.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and they had the brave conversation, and like you say, it worked out.
Yeah, I remember sitting down with someone in a podcast that I do, a journalist, who had been having panic attacks in one of the spaces that he worked for. And he never told his employer that he was having panic attacks. So they never knew the amount that he was struggling. And he felt like if he told them that he was having panic attacks, then he might lose his job or his career. Nobody else might want to employ him because they might think that he couldn't handle it. But as I watch the media space changing, more and more people talking about that, and I see employers wanting to help their employees, often imperfectly, but still wanting to help. The best thing he could have done would have been put it on the table. So the fact that he was able to bring that to the podcast to share it so that his former employer and future employers could hear it, I think is really healthy.
Brave.
Yeah, very brave.
Yeah. And a wonderful thing to do, I think, because it allows you to come home to yourself. I have suffered panic attacks. Stress has worked its way on me to a point where I need more support, or I need to find strategies to stay away from that stress or to remove the panic in some way. Because there are ways of, just getting the support and help that we need. Everybody needs help. We're designed to live in community. It's okay. I guess that's the beautiful thing about media chaplaincy is you can sit with somebody in a difficult space. They're the one that has to go and have the brave conversation, but nobody has to do this all on their own.
No, and if it goes very poorly, which it never has, but if it goes very poorly, then they have the opportunity to come back and tell me I completely got it wrong, and we'll still be good.
Awesome. Well, I tōtoko both of our journeys towards more brave, courageous, honest conversations.
Sunday Sanctuary, your mug of goodness.
This Sunday Sanctuary has been all about brave conversations, which has included brave listening, brave holding the tension, brave speaking up, brave picking your moment. Bravery, I guess. And sometimes I feel like it's the willingness to stand in the gap between somebody and a difficulty, to stand with them or beside them in that difficulty. And so this is the part of the podcast where we talk about communion, and Sunday Sanctuary is loosely based on an old school church service. And one of the things those churches do each week when they get together is called communion. And communion is literally, by definition, a coming together. It's a sharing or exchanging of intimate thoughts and feelings. And the dictionary said that's especially on a mental or spiritual level. So communion, when we commune with another, we essentially enter a relationship of recognition, like say recognizing the mana or humanity, the value of another, and acceptance, accepting that person, that situation for who they are. So in this scenario, communion is a communion between people with God and with each other. So God might not be your thing, but there are things happening inside this ritual that can be helpful to consider. So when we come to the table of Holy Communion, we recognise something God has done for us. St. Paul, often referred to just as Paul, in a letter to the church in a city called Ephesus, expressed it a bit like this. He said, "You who were once far off have been brought close to God." So what provides that closeness is what is represented in the elements of Holy Communion, which essentially is Jesus and what he did for the entire cosmos. So now there might be some words in that quote, "You who were once far off have been brought close," some words in there that could be difficult to hear. You who were once far off. That's a recognition that perhaps we weren't what or where we were meant to be, where it was life-giving, ideal, healthy for us to be. Perhaps we were doing things that caused distance or separation. Now, this can present itself in our lives in so many ways: addictions, poor treatment of other people, destructive behaviours towards ourselves or others. The list goes on. And personally, I relate to a bit of that list. Perhaps we have willfully or subconsciously rejected life and the source of life. Now, coming to communion, therefore, first involves a conversation with ourselves that might feel hard. We recognise an element of who we are, that we are in fact in need of what's being offered. We're in need of the gift God is giving. We recognise an element of brokenness in ourselves and we embrace the grace, the love that is on offer, given freely. That honest self-reflection and the acceptance of the love that is on offer is then intended to flow from us, into us, and out into how we engage with others. So it brings us to these honest, hard conversations with humility, not to judge or condemn others, but to be truthful with the same grace and love that we have said yes to, that we've received. And that is or can become like the grounding, the foundation for how we interact with others. So in this way, the communion, the brave conversations that we have with ourselves, with God, with each other, are not about beating down the other to conform to what we want or know. They are, in essence, invitations to move into life, making room, making space for others. An invitation to move beyond something that might be stunting an embrace of that life, that unless addressed can pull us in the opposite direction to life. This is a communion of love and grace. As is our usual way, we like to finish Sunday Sanctuary with a benediction, a blessing if you will. And today it's more of a personal reflection in the form of a poem. Here goes. Who am I to speak up, speak out, take the risk of reaching out to friend, whānau or fellow human being, say, hey, I think you might want to deal to that, be, oh no. I never did say anything to my colleague about his body odour. How could I? And not cause harm. Too hard, I thought. Help me, God, to have eyes to see and ears to hear where someone else is coming from, to hold on through momentary discomfort in these hard, embarrassing, shame-teetering conversations that can also be full of juicy hope, the hope that you know I'm trying my best. Children know the meaning of the word trying, pushing boundaries. Your breath smells, Mum. I won't talk to you if you're going to be judgy about my friends. I make a call to a friend about a family rift. We seek peace. Am I willing to hear the heartbeat of this conversation, gently pulsing under our brash or bruising words? Will I be a brave listener, wise contributor? One brave conversation taking me a step closer to another. Bless those small, inconsistent steps. Bless all our conversations, the brave and the timid, the trying, the learning. Bless this good, timid mahi. And so I guess it's interesting, isn't it, to finish with the word timid when we've been talking about brave, but my reflection on making this podcast has been that the practice of brave conversations requires me to show up again and again. And it's not about one big convo. It's not about that finally I'm willing to have that hard chat. It's about how maybe I need to speak up for myself or for another, but that if I can't speak up for myself, I can't speak up for another. So I guess I'd love to leave you with this idea that I am on this learning journey, that I think I fail as much as I succeed, but that I'm probably more committed to trying. Sam, my producer, who's the one who I said, could you please come over? Could we please do it tomorrow? Can you please bring all the stuff to my house? He said it was no inconvenience at all. And yet in my mind, I was being difficult and causing him, inconvenience and that sort of thing. So, that battle we have is so often with ourselves. And I want to remind you, I guess at the very end of this podcast, of the words of Shirley, where she said, in essence, we can walk towards a brave conversation full of curiosity. If that's our posture, our stance, being full of the wonder, what is happening for the other, the desire to understand my talk partner's perspective rather than to win, that in fact then we do, in inverted commas, win when we come away from a brave conversation, both parties feeling heard, even if we don't agree, because making the other person think like I do or them making me think like they do is not the idea of a brave conversation. But to be heard is truly powerful. So I can say that I will keep practicing these kinds of interactions, and I hope that you will feel perhaps a little more equipped or hopeful about a brave conversation that you might want to have in your life too, or brave conversations, feel free to follow us on Instagram. It's at Sunday Sanctuary NZ. We love the community that we're creating, and thank you for all your contributions to our questions. It's so gratefully received. We would love it if you would give us a 5-star review on the platform that you're listening on, because that helps the podcast get out and about. It basically helps it show up in more people's lives. And we hope that this is a life-giving podcast for people. So thank you for anyone who's reviewed. Feel free to do it. We love that too. It's been so delightful to hang out with you today. And let us know if you have any brave conversations and they go well, not go your way, go well, and they increase peace or joy or life or love in your life. So, ka kite anō until we meet again.